I think ultimately everybody's complaining McCaffrey didn't make it in there. You know, Miles Sanders is. Would you have put Sanders over McCaffrey? I mean, McCaffrey's kind of like a jack of all trades. You know, he does so many things, right? Like, I mean, if we were to pick for fantasy, you certainly are taking McCaffrey over Miles, but Sanders was really a huge part of their offense and their ability to run the ball, as Barkley was. So, you know, I don't really feel like, you know, when you look at some of the snubs, I didn't feel like that. I felt like, in fairness, I thought Jared Goff got snubbed. I think when you break – I don't think Kirk Cousins played as well this year numerically as he did last year. You know? Now, I know they won a lot of games, but I would say I would say Goff was to me, I have Goff ahead of Cousins this season. Like, I think I had Cousins in my red chip, as you know. We did that. But I think there's some moments where I don't think Cousins has played as well as he did last year. Yards per attempt down the field. Now, I'm not saying he's not playing good. I just think Goff has played better over the last 8 weeks than Cousins has.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating from the McCaffrey standpoint, that he was the leading vote getter for the fan vote for NFC running backs, but then the players and coaches did not put him in, similar to Tua in the AFC. So I don't know if it's
get that Tua snub in there. Yeah, you got to get that in there. I mean,
I'm just saying, I was saying he was the leading vote getter of all players in the entire league for the Pro Bowl, but then didn't make it. But on the McCaffrey note, I wonder if I don't know if it's necessarily out of sight, out of mind. He gets traded from Carolina to San Francisco. Maybe that factors into how the players and coaches thought about him. It's kind of a weird deal because he is probably one of the most versatile weapons in the NFL, and he's had a terrific season. When you look at the all-purpose yards, he's leading all of the guys who are the Pro Bowl running backs in the NFC, whether it's Saquon Barkley, Miles Sanders, or Tony Pollard. So it's kind of surprising that he got left off by the players and coaches, but maybe they thought he wasn't deserving, or at least wasn't more deserving than the other three guys who ended up making it. But I think from some quick fact notes, though, the Philadelphia Eagles, Michael, ended up having the most Pro Bowlers with 8. Yeah. And this goes back to what we talked about all offseason.
This always is the case. It always is the case with the best team. The team that wins the most has the most players, right? So you're going, you know, that's what's going to be the case. And I couldn't say that any of those guys that got voted in there didn't deserve it. And frankly, you know, when you look at the defensive tackle situation, I mean, Hassan Riddick got it at defensive end. I don't know if Zadarius Smith from Minnesota played consistently enough as an outside rusher. I mean, they've lacked some rushing. But I think when you look at Tony Hargrave, what he's done for Philly's interior defense, to me, for him being snubbed, I think Dexter Lawrence has played really well. I mean, Donald, obviously, when he's healthy, he is. Jonathan Allen's a really good player. But to me, I felt like that was one of those where, you know, how do you leave Hargrave is one of the Eagles' best defensive players. To leave him off the list is kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Donald made it, given that he's been injured the past few weeks. I mean, who knows? He's probably not going to play in whatever.
Well, I mean, none of them are going to play. They're all going to go stand there and you know, going to hang around, and you and two are going to go to Carbone.
I'm sure they'll be playing maybe on the blackjack tables on the strip, but
sure they will.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be interested.
I think some guys get there on like, I don't think Brian Burns. I think Brian Burns is a really good player, but I don't know if he's a true Pro Bowler based on the last. I mean, last week against Pittsburgh, he wasn't there.
Yeah, he was
like,
a ghost.
When you look at Carolina's third down defense and their ability sack per play. You know, when you look at those numbers, I'm going to give them to you right here. When you look at those numbers and you see Carolina, you know, they're 28th in third down, they're 26th in sack per play. Now, I mean, I know it's more than just one guy, but I think Burns is a really good player. I think he's a really good player, but I think he needs some help. I think the fact that there's nobody on the other side hurts him, and why those numbers are really are not as good for Carolina.
There were 2 teams with 7 Pro Bowlers, the Dallas Cowboys and the Kansas City Chiefs, 2 very popular teams once again. Ravens, 49ers had 6 Pro Bowlers. The Vikings had 5 players made it, but there were also 2 teams, Michael, with no Pro Bowl selections. That was the Jacksonville Jaguars and then the Chicago Bears. So the Fields campaign apparently didn't resonate.
The Ravens had 2 special teamers, the Devernay as a returner and Tucker as the kicker, which you can't argue with that, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can't argue with any of that as you look at it and I think Roquan Smith certainly deserves it. I think there's no doubt about that. So when you go through those guys, and I think, I'm trying to think who else they had on their team, because, when you got 6 Pro Bowlers, you're like thinking, oh, they had the fullback. There's 4. So they kind of – and then Andrews, I don't think you could argue with him as a Pro Bowler, right? I don't think you can argue with that one.
Has he been that great this year? I feel like he's dropped. I don't know if maybe their offense has just dropped off as a whole, but it feels like he hasn't had as great a year as he's had in the past.
No, I would agree with that. I think you could say that but a lot of that is their offense, which is, I've been bitching about it for how long now?
It's bad.
So, it's just bad. But he's still he's a talented guy. What other tight end in the AFC would you have put in over him? I mean, obviously Kelsey is the elite player of the group.
Yeah.
But, Ojobi got hurt in Cleveland, so I think that's kind of a hard thing.
Yeah, it's I think for the most part, the fans, players, coaches collectively get it right. There's just a couple of guys that are in there that are maybe should be or maybe not be there. Who knows? I mean, I think that typically I don't really care about TJ.
I didn't think TJ Watt was a Pro Bowler this year. I think he's playing hurt.
Yeah, he didn't.
I think he's playing hurt. Games. I mean, I don't think Derwin James is a Pro Bowler this year. He's missed some time, but there's names that are just going to get on the list no matter what.
Reputation.
And reputation. I think to me, and I'm sure the coaches kind of separated some of that, but I don't see that. Like Trey Hendrickson, he's hurt. I mean, one of the things Cincinnati hasn't been able to do this year is really generate the pass rush that they had a year ago.
Watt is definitely a reputation vote, because how many games did he miss this year? Like 6?
Missed like 6 or 7, and I mean, and so how do you get him in there? It is, but he's still a good player. But he's playing hurt. He's not the same player.
Yeah.
Neither is and neither is what that goes to your point about Mark Andrews. I don't think Andrews is having his best. How about Laramie Tunsil? You think that offensive line in Houston's having a great year?
I don't think they are. I don't think anything's having a great year in Houston. Although Jalen Petrie, the rookie safety, he's actually been a heck of a player. I've liked watching him in the games that I've seen.
Yeah, they have. I mean, he has to make a lot of tackles because the ball's coming to him. I mean, let's face it, he's the last line of defense in Houston, and that you got to have that line.
Yeah, there would be a lot of touchdowns on the board. Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, and for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.